part 3 and final part of our oil spill cleanup training delivered by Osha Safety Consult Nigeria Limited, authorized training partners Osha Academy. So today we'll be discussing on oil spill cleanup equipments. We will be highlighting the containment boom, the oil skimmer, as well as other equipment used for oil spill cleanup. Then also we shall be discussing the oil spill worker safety and health. So let's begin with the containment boom. So the containment boom is a flexible fence-type waterborne pollutant barrier that floats on the water. So basically, the containment boom is an equipment that is used to surround the oil in the water to prevent it from spreading further. You understand? I say how it is used. So it's used to contain all the slicks and leave the oil off the water. While it is containing the oil from spreading further, it also helps to absorb the oil, thereby helping to clean up the oil from the water as well. Then also it is reusable. It can be decontaminated and used again, you understand? They say it is very heavy to carry and difficult to work with. Having soaked up or absorbed the oil from the water, it becomes very heavy and difficult to carry, making it difficult to work with as well. Now, this is an example of a containment boom. Understand? You can see how it is used to surround the oil, preventing it from spreading to the other parts of the river. Understand? Then also the materials, it is made up of materials that can absorb the oil as well, thereby helping to clean up the river as well. Then in some cases, the containment boom is used along with other cleanup equipment like the skimmer or the sorbent. You understand? Now, for instance, while the containment boom is containing the oil from spreading, other device like the skimmer can be used to soak up the oil, or the sorbent used to absorb the oil, making the process to be quicker. You understand? So it can be used along with other cleanup equipments as well. Now, next is the oil skimmer. So the oil skimmer are a floating device used to skim oil off the surface of water or liquid. Many skimmers use oil attracting materials to help draw the oil to the system and facilitate a more complete cleanup. So basically, the oil skimmer is a device that mostly comes with an oil attracting material that is used to either soak up or suck up the oil from the surface of the water. And it is made up of three types. You have the well skimmer, you have also the drum skimmer, and the oleophilic skimmer as well. So the well skimmer, I said, function by allowing oil floating on the surface of the water to flow over a weir. The height of the weir may be adjustable as well. Now, this is an example of a weir oil skimmer, you understand? Now, what the machine basically does is that it is placed on the water where the oil spilled. Then there is a rotating part under it that helps to, when you turn it on, it helps to draw up the oil, not the water containing the oil. You draw it up through a pipe or a tube rather, and suck it out of the water, thereby cleaning the water as well, you understand? Now the second picture here is an example of how it is. You see the red part there is a rotating part that helps to draw up the water containing the oil, understand? You draw it up through the hose, and then you can then pour it in a container or a drum or whatever, you understand? So as it does that, the oil to be attracting as it's working, just like you have your borehole, understand? The way your borehole used to work, draw up water, understand? Draw up water from the ground. The same way, when this machine works, when you turn it on, it draw up the water, understand? So the surrounding oil, as it's drawing the water, the surrounding oil will be going with it and will be passing through the tube and then down to whatever container you are putting it. So that's basically how the wear schema works, by drawing up the water containing the oil through a tube to a container or whatever. You understand? Those three yellow stuff on it are floaters used to suspend it. You understand? So that's just basically how the wear oil schema works. Now, next is the drum schema. I say it's functioned by using rotating elements such as drums to which the oil adhere. The oil is wiped from the surface of the drum and collected. So basically how this works is that it uses equipment such as drum, you understand, the rotating drums. When it is turned on, the drums will rotate, and as it is rotating, it will be attracting the oil or the water containing the oil, and that is turning the oil will be adhering to it. It's made up of the drum is made up of materials that can aid it in adhering to oil. You understand? So as it is rotating, the oils will be adhering to it, sticking to it. And after a while, you can take it off, wipe off the oil, and continue the process again. So that's basically how the drum schema works. Then the next kind of schema is the oleophilic schema. You understand? So this one basically work the same way too. When it is turned on, it attracts the oil, and the oil stick to either the drum or the discs that are used in making it. So you turn it on, it draws up the oil just the same way like the other schemas as well, especially the wear schema. But in this case, the materials are inside, either the drum, the sorbent, or whatever. So when it draws it up, they attract or stick to the oil, and eventually it is carried off as well. So other equipment that can also be used in oil spill cleanup include a vacuum and centrifuge. Understand? Now you all know what vacuum is. So basically this work by soaking up using the vacuum to soak up the oil along with water into a centrifuge. You understand? Now this centrifuge spins and separates the oil from the water. So the vacuum, you use it to suck up, understand? To suck up the oil, and definitely it will come along with water. The duty of the centrifuge is to separate the water from the oil, you understand? The water can eventually be put back into the sea or ocean, depending on the cleaner as well. So the next is the solvents. Now the solvents is basically talking about any material that can be used to absorb the oil from the water. You understand? Any material that can be used to soak, you understand, to soak the oil from the water. It could be anything, even as a something like sawdust or hay or grass. You can use them to soak up the water from the oil, as long as the material has the ability to absorb. Once you use it, it can soak up the oil and makes that water body to be clean. You understand? So basically, any material, it could even be a cotton wool. Understand? Anything that can soak up that oil or soak up that oil from the water is what the solvent is talking about. It could be a cotton wool, it could be foam, it could be hay, it could be grass, it could be just anything that has that ability to soak up oil, and so to absorb oil is what the solvent is talking about. You understand? You can make use of hay. If you do an experiment now and you put the water in a bowl, would put an oil on it, put grass or something on it. After a while, you see that those grass or hay will soak up the oil from the water. And if you pack it out of the water, you will see that that water will become clean. Understand? It will be a piece of paper, whatever it is that can absorb or soak up the oil from the water is what the solvents is talking about. So the solvents can be divided into three main categories. The natural organic solvent, talking about the PMOS, the straw, the hay, the sawdust, feathers, and other readily available carbon substance. All these things that are listed has that ability to soak up the oil from the water. If you pack feathers in the maybe you pack feathers in that oil spill, you will see that after a while the feathers will soak up the oil. And if you pack the feathers out of the water, you will see that the water will become clean. Why? Because the feathers have soaked up all the oil from the surface of the water. Then you also have natural inorganic solvent, talking of clay, perlites, glass wool, sand, volcanic ash. All these things also have the ability to soak up oil, you understand, from surfaces or from water as well. Then you have synthetic solvents, talking about man-made materials such as plastics, similar to plastics such as polyurethane, polyethylene, propylene, and all those things that are designed to have the ability to absorb the liquid out of the surface of the water. Then said, note, solvent materials used to remove oil should be disposed in accordance with the local, state, and federal regulations. And also, oil from solvent materials should be properly disposed or recycled as well. So the next is bioremediation. Now, this is basically talking about the use of microorganisms to help break down the oil components and also clean or break down the oil component and clean up oil spill. You understand? Now, some microorganisms have been known to feed on the toxic compounds of oil or fuel and convert them to harmless carbon dioxide. You understand? So they feed on this oil. When the oil spill, they feed on its component, break it down, and gradually the oil is cleaned or eradicated from the surface of the river by the activities of those microorganisms. You understand? So what scientists do is that they feed these organisms, give them more nutrient to enable them to feed faster on these oil particles and gradually break them up and clean up the oil spill. You understand? So it's also a method that can be used in oil spill cleanup as well, as said by some scientists or by scientists. So the next and the final one we'll be talking about is the controlled burning, also referred as to as the in situ. Understand the in situ burning. That is basically burning off the oil from the surface of the water in a controlled way. Understand? You light up the oil, the area of the oil that is spilled, you light it up, and then the fire burns off, burn out the oil from the water. You understand? So it's one of the ways that can also be used to clean up the oil spill by burning up the oil burning up the oil in a controlled manner. And as I say, controlled burning does the following. Say burn the oil off the surface of the water, you understand? So you burn the oil from the water, then can effectively reduce the amount of oil in the water. By the burning, you reduce a large amount of oil from the water as well. Understand? This can only be done in slow winds. Now, when the wind is too high, it becomes difficult to control the burning. This is, it can cause air pollution and respiratory ailment, which is a major challenge of this controlled burning. Creates a great amount of pollution to the environment. So there is a number of problems which limit the viability of this technique. So there are issues, there are problems that comes along with using these techniques to try and clean up oil spill. Now, one of the problems is the ignition of the oil. You understand? The ignition of the oil is very difficult. You know that these oil that spill, they in some cases they are highly flammable. You understand? Especially at the initial stage when you have those very light crude. Understand that are highly flammable. At that point, it becomes very dangerous to ignite it. Understand? So the major problem there is who is going to light up this fire. Because at the end of the day, if you are not careful, it may consume you along with it. You understand? So the ignition of the oil is a very huge problem. Because if you are not careful, it may lead to more problems as well. Then also maintaining combustion of the slick, you understand? Remember, it's controlled burning. If there is a too much wind during the time of burning, it becomes difficult to control that burning and maintain the combustion, you understand? Then also say generation of large quantity of smoke, which is the major pollution, understand, and the serious disaster as well. Then the formation and possible sinking of extremely viscous and dense residue. Now, one of the problems of this particular method is that after the burning, it leaves behind some residue, you understand, which have some in some cases have the ability to sink into the water and also cause harm to the animals in the water habitat as well. Then you also have safety concern. Remember, we're talking of highly inflammable substance and fire. You understand? So it becomes, in as much as fire is involved, there's always a cause for safety concern. So we move on to the next chapter, talking about the oil spill cleanup, worker safety, and health. As I say, the potential for an emergency to occur during oil spill cleanup is large. To work in cleanup, you must be trained on the hazards of your job in the language you understand. You must be trained before you begin OSP response and cleanup, understand. So this particular job comes with a lot of hazards, understand. Comes with a lot of hazard. There is the hazard of fire, like I said, in case you are using the uh, controlled burning method. We are dealing with a huge water surface, either a sea or ocean, you understand? And so there is the chance of drowning, there is the hazard of drowning, you understand? So this job comes with a lot of hazards, potential hazards that can occur, you understand? So as a result, before you engage in this kind of job, make sure you are aware of all the hazards that are involved, and also make sure you understand all your job instructions. It should be properly explained to you in the language you understand. Where you are not clear, ensure to ask questions so that you get clarified. Make sure you have the proper training, you have the required skill before you go up to respond to OSP cleanup activities. Understand? Then, if an emergency occur, make sure you always notify your safety supervisor or safety officer in charge. You understand? And say for minor injuries or health concern, you can contact your first aid kits to talking of their minor injuries, little cuts, things that you know that with your first aid you can handle. You can do that as well. Injuries that are not too severe, that are regarded as minor, you can do what with your first aid kit, just take care of them. Then also if there is an hospital, maybe a clinic or a local hospital around, you can also take the person there to take proper clinic. Or if there is an EMT or a nurse station, take them there to undergo proper care as well. Then for a more serious injury, you can call your direct supervisor, report to your supervisor immediately, or you call 911 or your local response unit in your country, understand? Then know your exact location. Always ensure that while you are going for oil cleanup duty, you know where you are. In case of an emergency, you can place a call and describe where you are accurately. So one of the first steps in going for oil cleanup duty is make sure you know the location, make sure you know where you are going to. Should in case of any emergency and you need help, you can easily describe where you are easily. Then say keep an injured worker in a safe location until an assistant arrives. You understand? So if anyone is injured, make sure you keep them in a safe place while calling for assistance till they come. Then don't move an injured worker unless safety is at risk. You understand? Now, if someone has some sort of injury, understand, and you know you are not a health worker, you're not an expert in those things, do not move the person unnecessarily, as moving that person may end up complicating the the injury, you understand? So the only occasion why you should move such person only when there is a safety risk. You understand? If you don't move the person, something more dangerous will occur. You understand? In that case, you can move the person. But if the person is not at risk of any sort, just let the person be and call for help. Don't try and move the person so that you don't strain the injury further. Then use the body system to aid and help each other. You should always look out for each other. You understand? While you are walking, be your neighbor's eye, and your neighbor will also be your eye as well, so that at the end of the day, any form of hazard in that place can easily be located and attention given immediately. So the next thing here is protecting yourself. Now, one thing you have to know is that your safety is always a priority. You understand? You are more important than the job or duty you are performing. Your safety should always be at the top of your list at every time. The job comes second, your safety comes first. You are more important than that particular job or role that you are playing in that OSP cleanup activity. Your safety should always be your priority. Then also you watch out for laceration, anything that can give you cut or injuries, slips, trips, and falls, especially when walking on oil slick rock. You understand those rocks that are already stained with the oil, they have a tendency to cause a slip and to fall, you understand, and even give you laceration or some sort of injury as well. And also remain current with tetanus injection, understand, in case of cut and all those sort of injury. Tetanus injection, you should also ensure to take them when there is any sort of cut or whatever. Then also it's a get hepatitis B vaccine if you will be performing direct patient care. If you are in that particular site to give direct care to persons who may be injured or have one issues or the other, then you should take the hepatitis B vaccine because you'll be dealing with bloods and other opium as well. So ensure to take the vaccine to protect you from any form of hepatitis that anyone will be carrying in the course of that carrying out that job. And also wear oil resistance glove when in contact with oil and oil waste. You understand? Then use hearing protection in noisy environment. Some of the machines that may be used may emit so much noise. Wear your earmuff to protect you from any form of noise. Then wash and sanitize immediately if exposed to toxic substance. Understand? Wash and sanitize your hands immediately. Then, if you are in doubt of anything, always ensure to ask your supervisor. Don't do anything or carry out any job in ignorance. Ensure to ask questions and know what you are doing at all time. Then we move on to the hazards of heat stress. Now, one of the most common challenges that is facing cleanup worker is this particular heat stress. And it could be as a result of being exposed to hot temperate conditions, understand? Maybe very hot weather while doing the cleanup or as a result of the heavy PPEs that they may put on in the course of carrying out the job, you understand? So all this result in heat stress that can lead to heat injury when the body can no longer carry the amount of heat that is being faced, you understand? The body becomes overwhelmed with the heat and it leads to what? Heat injury. And this heat injury can be severe at times and even deadly at times as well. All right, so some examples of hazard of heat stress are heat rashes. You all know heat rashes, which is usually as a result of profuse heat. Rash start growing on your body and making you feel inconvenient. Then you also have the heat exhaustion, talking about when the body becomes overwhelmed with the extreme temperature. At that point, you begin to sweat profusely, you understand? And then also, you start breathing heavily. That is to say, you can no longer breathe properly. That's for the heat exhaustion. Then you also have the heat stroke. Now, the heat stroke is one of the most severe illness of heat stress. It's a very serious illness as well. And this is the point where the body can no longer control its temperature. At this point, the body temperature keep rising and rising and rising without control. So this is a very, very serious heat illness as well. Then you also have the heat syncope. The heat syncope is talking about that fainting feeling or feeling of dizziness you get when you probably stand for a very long time, or when maybe you sit up or stand up from a lying position, that feeling of dizziness that you get. For instance, you are lying down, then all of a sudden you sit up or you stand up. Understand? That dizzy feeling you get is what is being referred to as the heat syncope. Understand? And it's usually associated with dehydration. Understand? When you lack water, you've not taken enough water, you are dehydrated. It's usually the cause of this heat syncope. Then you also have the heat cramp, which is popularly referred to as the muscle pull. You understand? As a result of long exercise, and especially in an extreme or hot condition. And so these are some of the heat example of hazard of heat stress. Then it says factors increasing heat stress. One of them is high temperature and humidity. When the working conditions is exposed to high temperature, you understand, the temperature of the working condition is high, and there is also high humidity. Then when there is direct sun exposure, let's say there are no shades, you are just working directly under the sun, and that can lead to heat stress as well. Working in extreme heat. You also have limited air movement. For instance, you are having to do your cleanup in a more confined space where you have little or no air. That will also lead to heat stress as well. Then physical exertion, you understand. Now, when you keep working over a long period of time without maybe having a time to rest or take some break, you become exerted, and that can generate heat or stress as well. Then wearing protective clothes and equipment. Some of these PPEs that are worn to do this cleanup are usually very heavy, and they generate a lot of heat as well. Then we have the preventing heat injury. Say know the signs and symptoms of heat illness. Monitor yourself and watch out for your co-worker. You should know the signs of heat illness. You understand? One of the signs is restlessness. When you are having this heat stress or heat injury, you become restless. As you understand, you become restless. You understand? Then another sign is also confusion. When you're undergoing excess stress, excess heat, you tendency to become confused and not too coherent. Those are some of the signs and symptoms. Then also you should always watch out for each other. You understand? Use the body system. Look out for each other. When you notice these signs in any of your colleague, be quick to react and try and help out. You understand? So be your brother's keeper when you are in such working conditions. And then wear a hat to block off direct sun. In a situation whereby you are not working under shades and you are working directly under the sun, you can put on your hat to at least reduce the effects of the sun. They also use cooling fan air conditioning for resting breaks and rest regularly in shaded areas. You understand? They also wear lightweight, light colored, and loose fitting clothes. Don't wear things that are too tight. When you put on clothes that are too tight, there's tendency for you to have more, to generate more heat as well. Then also wear protective clothes that actively cool the body as well. Then you have the work and rest cycle. Now, the work and rest cycle is basically talking about working for a while and also resting for a while. It's one of the methods that are used to reduce heat stress a lot. You understand? It may not be mandatory if you already have the other methods put in place. For instance, you already have a air conditioning working environment or a ice vest for your workers where the temperature can be cooled even while working. It may not be necessary. Understand? But in absence of those other stuffs, it should be the best option, you understand, where the workers, they work for a while and they rest. And usually they are expected to rest in a cool place, you understand, or a shaded place. And also while they are resting, any equipment, any PPE that is not required should be taken off so that they can take in enough air into their body before going back to work again. Then fluid intake, say drink plenty of cool water, drink even before you are thirsty. You understand? Sport drinks are good idea to replace electrolytes. So while working in this condition, it is very good that you taking enough water. Taking water helps to hydrate you, and also taking sport drinks also help to replace your electrolytes and make you more active. Then also urine output. Now with the color of your urine, you can be able to tell if you are taking enough water, understand? Then you also have fatigue. But first, this is an example of a urine indicator, you understand? So when your urine is clear to pale yellow, it indicates that you have a good hydration. When it is temperate and light yellow, understand, it also shows normal, understand, indicate ideal hydration, light yellow, and so on and so forth. With the color of your urine, you can be able to tell if you are taking enough water or not. Then back to the fatigue, understand. Now this is also another factor that can affect the overall health of workers who are working in the oil spill cleanup, you understand. So you should always ensure that you regulate yourself when you are working and you feel you are getting tired. Take a break and rest, you understand. Don't over exhaust yourself trying to carry out your work. Always look out for yourself and take rest. Take a rest when needed. You understand? That's one of the things to do or important things to look out for is that watch out for each other. You understand? While you are working in this environment, like I said, use the body system. You are your neighbor's keeper. You understand? Always watch out for your colleagues, even while they are working. If you notice any form of stress, confusion, or some sort of inconsistency, always react and try to help them out and make them regain themselves. You understand? Then be cautious of those around you. Responders who are exhausted, feel stressed, or even temporarily distracted may place themselves and others at risk. You understand? Then also maintain as normal a schedule as possible. Regular eating, sleeping are crucial. Don't stay up for too long, understand? If you don't get proper sleep, it may affect how you function the next day. Usually you cannot cheat nature. So sleep at the right time and so you can wake up and do your work appropriately without feeling dizzy or weak, you understand? And also make sure you drink plenty of water and fluids like we said earlier. Then also the respiratory protection, you understand? Always ensure to put on a respiratory protection when working in a hazardous atmosphere. Remember some of these are crudes that may spill on the water. They emit toxic substances, especially the very light crude oil that evaporates immediately the oil is spilled, understand? They have some chemicals that are very toxic. Like we talk about the maintain and the toluene that are very toxic as well. So always ensure to put on your respiratory protection, you understand? Some examples of respiratory protection is talking about a simple trap dust mask, which is the simple mask that you wear to cover your nose against dust. You also have the half face respirator. Understand? This covers your part of your face and it aids you in breathing as well. Then also you have the full face respirator, cover the whole of your face with a aid for you to breathe as well. You have a self-contained breathing apparatus like the ones that are used by divers in the rivers as well. And these are example of the different respiratory mask. Like you have the face mask, half face mask for dust, and then you also have the half face respiratory mask and the full face, as well as the full body respiratory mask as well. So we end here. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you've all enjoyed the training and you've been able to learn one or two things in the course of the training as well. So we meet later for your questions and discussions as well. Thank you very much.